For the latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for more updates.
Did you know that India could save 4 lakh lives every year by providing access to drinking water? Did you know that in rural Uttar Pradesh, only 1.94% people had access to drinking water through tap in 2019? Did you know that even today, only Jagannath Puri is a city which provides 24/7 access to drinking water by tap? Hello and welcome to another edition of Capital Calculus. I am your host Anil Padmanabhan. As I laid out in my introduction, India's tryst with drinking water is a legacy of neglect, a fatal one at that. A recent review of India's water program by the World Health Organization, which was released last week, revealed that 4 lakh lives would be saved annually if India provided access to drinking water. India is now seeking to make amends through its ongoing drinking water mission called Har Ghar Jal. In the 4 years since its launch, access to drinking water in rural India has more than trebled to 60%. This huge milestone includes many intangible gains, including the empowerment of women. To understand this profound socio-economic transformation happening in India, we spoke to Vini Mahajan, Secretary in the Ministry of Drinking Water. I began by asking the Secretary about the compelling revelations that were part of the World Health Organization's review of India's ongoing drinking water mission.
So we are very pleased that what was always known in an anecdotal fashion, that the provision of clean drinking water to households has a very major impact on so many things, but the impact on health and consequently an economic impact arising out of health is very significant. This understanding has been not only endorsed but converted into a very scientific assessment by the WHO and released very recently. And this study has found that once the Jal Jeevan mission completes the task of providing functional tap connections to every rural household, there will be 400,000 lives saved simply on account of avoidance of diarrheal deaths. And similarly, there would be 14 million DALYs saved on this account. We know that this is a technical concept in the health sector, the disability adjusted life years. And the economic impact of this, the DALYs averted, is of the order of $100 billion. The WHO study has also looked at data around the time spent by households in collecting water. If they do not have a tap water connection in their own home, the finding based on data that WHO has studied suggests that there is significant daily time spent on getting drinking water and water required for the household, and that this amounts to about 5.5 crore hours daily. Every single day, 5.5 crore hours are spent on getting water for rural households. I'm only talking about rural households. And this would be saved with the provision of tap water inside the home, which is what the Jal Jeevan mission attempts to do. And also remember that the task of getting this water falls substantially on the shoulders of women. So this is a very direct impact on women, that there is this huge saving on time and so many other concomitant benefits.
So I want to pick up from where you just left off, where you talked about the impact on women. So if we tag this with other welfare measures like cooking gas, electricity, housing, financial inclusion, so what does this, all of them pulled together, tell us about the socio-economic transformation of India that we are witnessing, say, in the last decade and more?
Yes, I believe that the country, as it moves rapidly on the path of development, $5 trillion economy and so many other things, in so many ways, this the priority given to social sector, what we used to call social sector schemes, uh, which are so hugely empowering, particularly for women, but also for the poor and disempowered generally. This is a remarkable achievement of the last few years. And for instance, when the Prime Minister announced on 15th August 2019 from the ramparts of the Red Fort, the Jal Jeevan mission, implicit in that was an understanding that as we just discussed, the burden of fetching water falls on the women. So there is this drudgery, there is this the arduous task of getting, sometimes walking miles, but spending, as we've just said, 5.5 crores hours daily on just getting water, but also associated with it, for instance, the economic impact of the women not being able to work, girls not being able to go to school, and all of that. So, but it's not just women, because if in a village, if there is some gap, if some households have access to drinking water or otherwise enough availability of water and some don't, we know for sure that it is the poorer, the weaker, the disempowered who are likely not to have that access. So the equity issue there. And therefore, all the schemes that you mentioned and the approach of saturation that has been adopted, no one left behind, no one left out of these benefits, the speed and scale at which these things are being done. This is an amazing impact on on women, on the poor, on the weak, but on the country as a whole. Because as we enter the 75th year of our independence, moving towards Amrit Kal, there is no question that we cannot afford to ignore or in any way leave behind people impacted by these very basic requirements of clean fuel, of financial inclusion, of basic sanitation, of drinking water, etc.
Which brings me to my next question. This program started in 2019. At that time in rural India, about 3 crore households reported connection tap water at home. And today, 60% of these households, which are about 19 odd crore, are now covered by this tap connection. So, my question is, how did you pull this off in such a short span of time?
I think even when Jal Jeevan mission was announced, it was recognized that this is going to be a humongous task. It's not just the numbers. Of course, you've referred to the numbers. We estimate, based on the data uploaded by the states and UTs, that there are about 19.4 crore rural households. And of course, the number keeps increasing over the years, as we know. We also know that only 3.23 crore were covered as of 15th August 2019. So there was over 16 crore households left to be covered. And as you said, today over 9 crore of those have already been covered, and we are at a moving at a very brisk pace. In fact, it's a matter of the greatest satisfaction that in the recent past, starting from 1st January of this year, for instance, every single minute of every single day, one new household is receiving water supply through a tap connection.
So, just to clarify, the momentum you said has picked up from January this year. So, it is one tap connection a minute or one tap connection a day? So,
Every second, every single second, one household in the country somewhere is receiving a new tap connection, water supply through a tap every single second, starting from the 1st of January this year. And of course, this is building on work done in the past.
So, when can we expect the program to successfully conclude?
Uh, we are taking one day at a time. Every day is important because there are so many elements to be seen.
While the outcomes of India's ongoing water mission are remarkable, I was curious to know as to how these public assets will be preserved, especially given the history of India's public assets.
So there are two aspects of sustainability broadly that we are focusing on now, especially when so much work has already been done all over the country. The first is sustainability of the sources. So we know that a lot of the requirements of drinking water are met through groundwater sources. In fact, Jal Jeevan mission has had the impact of much more surface water based schemes than were there earlier, because in areas which were found to be water stressed or where there was geogenic contamination such as arsenic and fluoride, etc., which was inherently problematic, and where water treatment technologies are not suitable, they're bringing in safe, call it portable drinking water from surface water sources such as rivers, dams, etc., was done. But still, about 2/3 of our rural households will get their drinking water from groundwater sources. And we also know that there are, so many agroclimatic variations in the country. But overall, we know that India is a country with a large and growing population. The water resources are relatively limited and not as large as most other countries have. So we have to make sure that if we draw groundwater, for instance, for drinking water purposes, then there must be due care taken to ensure that these sources do not dry up, and particularly don't dry up in the hot summer months where in large parts of the country the water table really goes down. So, and of course, we also know that drinking water per se does not use up large quantities of water. The big user is agriculture. So, we need to work on the whole ecosystem. But we are at the moment focusing very strongly uh, on making sure that the drinking water sources are sustainable.
What about managing the program at the grassroots level?
The other big ticket item around sustainability is sustainability of the scheme itself. And that has several components, but the most important one being, how do we make sure that that scheme is managed properly so that the operations and management, the maintenance, there are schemes covering 6 lakh villages in the country. So, how should a remote rural village, or even not so remote village, how can it be assured that if there's some small defect, the pump goes off, there is some small leakage, any other small thing, people should not have to wait until some repair person comes in from the nearest town or city. Can we do skilling locally? And again, this is something the Prime Minister has really been encouraging us to look at. So we worked with the Ministry of Skill Development and devised a course for multi-skilling of village people. And we are telling all the states that they must ensure that in every village there should be 1 or 2 people who are skilled in being able to handle basic requirements of plumbing, electrical work, and so on. Then there's also question of ownership. So how will these repairs, etc., take place if the village community thinks that this is a government asset and the junior engineer or somebody has to come and do it for them? So again, the encouragement that the schemes must be handed over after completion, handed over to the local community, the Gram Panchayat, and through the Gram Panchayat to village water and sanitation committees. There are single village schemes, groundwater based, so those definitely can be taken over. But even for large multi-village schemes, the in-village infrastructure, the distribution network, and so on, can and should, and this is our encouragement to the states. And then finally, financial sustainability, because we do have to make sure there will be some costs involved in operations and maintenance. some repair costs, maybe the costs of some consumables, chlorine, etc., the cost of some pump operator or somebody else. How will that be met? And again, water is a state subject, but we are encouraging the states to review what are the likely costs, to empower the gram panchayats and the village communities to be able to levy whatever appropriate user charges they believe should be levied, to collect and retain those locally. They should not go into the treasury. They should be available to the village community to be used for running of these schemes. And again, the good news is that all over the country, we find that village people are actually happy to pay reasonable amounts for water. They are levying and collecting amounts ranging from rupees 30 per household per month, in some places as high as rupees 200 per household per month.
Wow, you heard the secretary? Implementing user charges for drinking water is amazing. Normally, any proposal to levy user charges on drinking water would be very contentious. You may recall that many politicians are offering free drinking water to woo at the electorate.
Yes, I believe we are all aware that there is some distinction between the willingness to pay and the willingness to charge. So very often this becomes a little bit of a political question on levying user charges. But we believe that that applies much more to monies charged by the government and collected and used by the government. And perhaps communities may not be as willing to do that. But when it is clear that this money, that firstly, that this is their scheme, and that they will be the owners of the scheme, and that whatever is collected will be retained by them and used for this purpose, then we find that there is widespread acceptance for levying collection using the user charges. We also believe that there is a very powerful role that women play in all of this.
According to the Constitution of India, water is a state subject. However, the Har Ghar Jal mission is an initiative of the union government. Clearly, its remarkable success is an example of cooperative federalism. So far, the only other marquee example of cooperative federalism was the goods and services tax. It required the pooling of sovereignties for the idea of one nation, one tax to be rolled out.
Yes, I think we can say that. I think the provision of clean drinking water to rural households, while being a national priority, was very successfully brought to the attention of all states and became their priority as well. So, like I said, by now, all states have bought into this, are working, to the best of their abilities. I think this is. I would endorse what you're saying. I believe this is a remarkable example of the union, the states, the local bodies, especially the rural local bodies and the communities, working together to achieve a common objective.
It is then clear that the successful rollout of India's drinking water mission has scored many victories. This includes saving lives, improving health, empowerment of women, and of course, cooperative federalism. If you ask me, it is a yes we can movement, especially since it meant overcoming a legacy of neglect that stretches over 7 decades. And that too by delivering at this stage one tap connection to rural India every second. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to Strat News Global on YouTube. Hit the bell icon so that you don't miss any updates. And please do share your thoughts, ideas and suggestions with us. I'm available on Twitter at Capital Calculus. I'll be back next week with another episode. Till then, stay safe.